Guys, welcome back into the channel. Today I have another hidden gems video for you guys, and if you guys have been following the channel for a while, you might know that I've already done a defensive backs video or a corners video on the channel. So some of these players are going to look familiar to you, but I've reevaluated, I've added more players. This is quite an extensive list compared to what I've done in the past, and a very wide range from low 60s all the way up to 80 overall of hidden gem players that you could probably get for a reasonable price and will be able to play extremely well for you, and you'll be able to turn into really good players for you. Now, let's just talk a little bit for the newer people to the channel about the criteria here. These have to be younger players, and oftentimes players that you can get for a reasonable price. Some of the players I have added to this list, like Dante Jackson, you're not going to be able to get for a very good price. I mean, you're going to have to give up a lot to get a player like Dante Jackson, but there are quite a few players on this list, like Levi Wallace or Trevor Williams, maybe even Avonte Maddox or Trey Flowers, that you're going to be able to get for a more reasonable price, and a lot of players down here lower on the list that you can get for free off of free agency, you could get off of people's practice squads, or you could trade low round picks just to get these guys onto your teams, and you could turn them into really valuable starters. Now, stick around till the end of the video because I'm going to actually show you guys some of my franchises where I've gotten guys like Teron Johnson or even some of the lower overall players like Tremont Smith up into the 80s, and they are superstar players for me. And so I want to show you guys that I can actually do that. You guys can do that yourself. You can take anybody on this list and make them into a really valuable player for you if you use them to their potential. Now, let's actually get into it and talk about why some of these players are so good. Now, Dante Jackson, I had to add to this list, and he's obviously the highest overall player. He's the most valuable player on this list by a long shot, and the reason being is that he has 96 speed, 95 agility, and 93 acceleration. And so what I've noticed through playing with him, and I try to get him in any franchise I possibly can, he's just an absolute monster. He is everywhere. He breaks on the ball super fast, and he gets a ton of interceptions on longer throws, and he's jumping routes constantly, and he's able to get there and get picks because of the fact that he has super athletic ability. I mean, you can't compete with 96 speed as a defensive back. He's just all over the place. And you're actually seeing that in real life, that he's actually turning into a really good defensive back. And so this is one of the best players on this list. If you guys have the ability to trade for him, definitely trade for him. He's going to be the more expensive one, probably the most expensive one on this list, so keep that in mind. But if you have the opportunity to get Dante Jackson is an absolute monster. Moving down, we're actually going to have Levi Wallace, who might be people, but is a very solid corner. Good size or anything like that, but he plays very well. And I actually have a Bills franchise right now where I haven't focus trained him or anything, and he's up to about an 82, and he's a very solid starting corner for me. I like to play him in the slot quite a bit because his size bodes well to matching up against people on the inside. I like getting him matched up on tight ends and stuff because he can run with them, he can tackle them, and he's a very effective corner. So Levi Wallace, I recommend picking up. You could use him on the outside, you could use him as a slot corner, but definitely somebody you could get for a reasonable price because the Bills have good corners that, they won't miss Levi Wallace. They also have Teron Johnson on here, who I actually like better than Levi Wallace, but we'll get to him in a minute. So the top two, Dante Jackson, going to be expensive for you. Levi Wallace, going to be a little bit less expensive. And then the third player here is Trevor Williams. Trevor Williams is a player that I believe he's been on a couple different teams, and he might be a free agent if you start a league right now. He's 25 years old, so he's a little bit on the older end, but he plays really well as a corner, and I believe he still has star potential. In fact, I believe Dante Jackson has star or superstar. I think star, if I'm not mistaken. And Trevor Williams is just a absolutely athletic guy. I mean, 91 speed, 89 agility, and 90 acceleration, which is very good. He's got good awareness, so his coverage stats and his ability to actually make plays on the ball early on is very good. You're not going to get him up to a super high overall because he is 25 years old, but you do have a few years left of development, and if you focus trained him, you could probably get him up into the high 80s if you chose to. A very effective corner, a guy that I have personally used quite a lot in a bunch of different franchises and gets me a lot of interceptions. I mean, I have guys like Tre'Davious White, and they don't get nearly as many interceptions as a guy like Trevor Williams does. I don't know if it's just because I'm playing him as like my second corner or my slot corner, but he plays really well. And I highly, highly recommend you try and look out for Trevor Williams because you can get him for a reasonable price. He's older. He's 25 years old compared to these other guys. He's a 78, so he's not at that 80 threshold where they become, infinitely more expensive. You can get him for a reasonable price, and he is a pretty good player. Next one on this list is rookie Byron Murphy. I considered not putting him on this list because you're probably not going to be able to trade for him. I mean, he's a rookie. He's going to have super high value. I don't know what his development trade is. I'm assuming it's better than normal development. But I did want to include him on this list just because I've seen what some people have been able to do with him. And as a slot corner, at the very least, he is a very effective slot corner. You can move him to safety, and he plays safety pretty well. And you can play him on the outside. If you manage to get lucky enough to get a speed upgrade on him, I definitely recommend starting him on the outside. One of the best things about him is that he's 21 years old. So if you happen to start a franchise with the Cardinals, you're pretty much set in the defensive backfield. I mean, you have Pat P for the time being, and then you have a lot of young guys that you can develop into starters for you. But I highly recommend Byron Murphy. Much like Dante Jackson, he's just a guy that if you can get your hands on him, I recommend you try to, but he will be on the more expensive end. And as we go down the list here, you'll be able to get guys that are a little bit less expensive than that. The next guy on this list that I like a ton, he is very much like Dante Jackson. I kind of call him the discount Dante Jackson, is Avonte Maddox out of Pittsburgh. He is on the Philadelphia Eagles. His downside is that he's a little bit short, so he's not going to be able to reach balls sometimes, but he makes up for it with his 93 speed, 96 agility, and 94 acceleration. That 96 agility is the super highlight for him, probably the best one out of anybody on this list. Absolutely phenomenal stat. Allows him to change directions very quickly, break on the ball, make plays. And so for a 77 overall, he's going to play like a much higher overall player because he has that really good physical attribute. He has that really good agility, really good acceleration, really good speed. He's going to be able to break on the ball a lot. He's only 23 years old, so you can pretty much take him and develop him into whatever type of corner you choose to make him. The only downside to him is that he's only 5'9", so he will struggle sometimes in coverage against taller receivers. So I definitely recommend picking him up as a kind of discounted option. The Eagles have corners out their ass, so you could trade for any one of their corners and probably get them at a discounted rate, because I'm sure they have 2 or 3 corners just sitting on the trade block as is if it's an AI team. And I'm sure that if it's a user team, they're going to be looking to trade away some of their corners to get back players at other positions, or maybe free up some cap space or something like that. Get Avonte Maddox if you can, because he is a freak of an athlete. The next person on this list is Trey Flowers, coming in from Seattle, 24 years old, 77 overall, nice speed at 91 speed and 92 acceleration. The downside for him is that he doesn't have very good agility, so you're taking a little bit of a risk by bringing in Trey Flowers because of that lack of agility, but that's a reason that you could probably get him for a reasonable price off of other people. Now, he is one of the better corners for the Seahawks, so if it's an AI team, you might struggle to trade for him slightly. But if it's a user, they might not be too fond of him. I know a lot of people have tried to use him and aren't big fans of him, but when used properly as maybe like a slot corner or something like that, or usering him, or maybe switching him to safety and using him as a safety, he can become a very effective player. I really recommend Trey Flowers, and one of the reasons is he has that 91 speed to combine with a 6'3" frame, 203 pounds. He's a really, really good move to safety. I really recommend moving a guy like this to safety. That height is really nice. He's able to get up and get balls, and he's able to actually make plays in the run game because he has decent strength and decent run-stopping abilities. He's not the best, but one of the better corners if you wanted to take somebody athletic and move them to safety. Now, Teron Johnson is the next guy. Nothing sticks out for him in particular that is all that great, and you guys will see, though, later on when I go to a franchise that he is a monster of a player. 89 speed, so not the best. Definitely more of a slot corner, but plays really well as a slot corner. 85 agility and 92 acceleration. I believe his coverage stats are just decent enough that he's able to make plays, but I feel like he's one of those guys that I've talked about in the past that is just coded into the game to play well. And I'll show you guys later on that I've turned him into an absolute monster on my Bills team. He is just a really, really good player. He's got a ton of interceptions, and that's one of the things that I like best about him. Sidney Jones is another corner off the Eagles that you could probably get for a discounted price. A guy that has a lot of potential. He does have star development. He has a nice 6-foot frame. He has nice speed at 90 speed and 92 acceleration. Decent agility at 88. And only 23 years old. Another guy very similar to Ron Johnson, really, that you could turn into a nice corner for yourself. Highly recommend you go out and get him. Like I said, the Eagles are easy to trade with because they have so many corners. You can pick pretty much any one that you want and get them and have a reasonable argument for doing that trade. So definitely recommend going after one of the Eagles corners. Fabian Moreau is one that gets overlooked quite a bit, but a really good athletic player with 94 speed and 93 acceleration. I've seen that he makes a whole lot of plays. I've used him a couple times this year, and I like him quite a bit. He's a little bit older at 25 years old, and at a 74 overall for a 25-year-old, you're looking at a really decently cheap player. You're probably not going to be able to develop him into a superstar or anything like that, but he would be a nice second or third corner for you at that age and overall point, and just a guy that plays really well because of his athleticism. I definitely recommend you guys check him out. I believe he's on the Redskins, so go give him a look as well. Jalen Mills, I believe, is the last corner on this list from the Eagles. Another guy that plays really well, and he has nice, really well-rounded stats with 90 speed, 91 agility, and 90 acceleration. He's 25 years old, so a little bit older, so you can get him for cheap, but he is 6 foot tall, so he has a good frame, 191 pounds, and actually has decent coverage stats. So I do recommend going and taking a look at Jalen Mills. He's a guy that's actually been a higher overall in the past, so he's another one that's kind of been programmed to play well in the game. And I guess this year he might have faced some injuries or had a down year, and so they decreased his rating in Madden, but he still plays like a higher overall, so I do recommend you take a look at Jalen Mills as well. One of the only other rookies on this list is going to be DeAndre Baker. And DeAndre Baker's a guy that I think a lot of people will shy away from because he's only got 88 speed, only 85 agility, and 89 acceleration. So not the greatest physical attributes. He's 22 years old, which is a plus. He's a very young player. He is a rookie, obviously, and a 71 overall. But a lot of people stay away. It's a little bit slow. But that's all the more reason to trade for him because you can get him for a decent price. If somebody is the Giants, definitely try and negotiate a trade for DeAndre Baker. They probably won't see him as valuable as you do. And the reason he is super valuable is because he's a super effective slot corner. Really, really can't emphasize this enough. Try and trade for DeAndre Baker because I know that people out there will undervalue him. You'll be able to get him for cheaper than what he's really worth, and you can turn him into a really good corner, especially if you get lucky with speed upgrades and get him a couple speed upgrades. He will turn into a really good corner for you. And if not, you could move him to safety. I mean, with 88 speed, that's really good safety speed, and you could turn him into an effective starting safety for you. The next one is Artie Burns. I had to include him on the list, the failed first-round pick by the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's 24 years old at this point, a pretty athletic player with 91 speed, 92 acceleration, only 86 agility. This is just a guy that I know you'll be able to get for a discounted price. He plays decently well. You might be able to turn him into a good player. I've used him a lot because, obviously, I'm a Steelers fan. So I've used him in a lot of franchises, and I've started him, and he plays decently well. So I don't know how well you'll be able to develop him, but certainly a guy that you could take and plug and play and could play effectively for you. Somebody that I recommend quite a bit. One that I recommend even more highly than that is Mike Ford, one of my favorite players on this list, 24 years old out of southeastern Missouri State. 90 speed, 94 agility, and 92 acceleration. So really, really good physical attribute stat line there. a guy that plays the ball really well because of his agility, because of his acceleration. He's going to be able to break on the ball. He's going to be able to run with receivers and make cuts quickly and get to where you need him to go. So that's pretty much all I need to say about him. I've used him a ton. I've got him up to the 80s. I've used him as an effective corner. I've used him as a safety, and I like him quite a bit. One of my most favorite players on this list is Grant Haley. You can probably already see why he's one of my favorite players on this list. He has, I believe, the best agility rating on this list, with 91 speed, 91 acceleration, and 97 agility. This is a guy that a lot of people will overlook. He's on the Giants. And people see a 70 overall, 23 years old, and they're like, okay, yeah, whatever. But this is a guy that you could turn into an absolute stud for your team. And the reason being is this 97 agility rating. He breaks on the ball every time it's thrown his way. At least in my experience, if he is put out there as a number 2 or number 3 corner, he does phenomenal. I mean, this guy comes off the bench and gets more picks than my starters do. And it's not even like he has a very good catching rating or anything like that. It's only 59. He does a really, really good job playing corner as only a 70 overall. This, if I could pick one of the most hidden gem type players on this list, it's Grant Haley. Grant Haley is a phenomenal player in Madden 20. Go and get him at all costs. I don't care what it takes you to get him and try him out, because he's a very, very good player. The next one on the list, the last one in the 70s, is Obi Melifonwu. You guys have probably seen him on my channel before multiple times. The reason I love him so much is just because of his athletic ability combined with his size. Where else can you find a 6'4", 224-pound player that has 92 speed and 93 acceleration? Now, this guy plays better at safety than at corner, but I don't need to say much more other than he's super freaking tall and super freaking fast, and that combination is absolutely killer because he gets in the way of balls nonstop. He's able to just deflect passes away, and even if he's not making interceptions, he's able to make deflections. He's able to tackle in the run game. He's just a really good all-around player. You might even be able to transition this guy to like linebacker or something and have a super fast linebacker if your league allows that, because this guy's 6'4", 224. He could probably play that position if that's something you wanted him to do. Highly recommend Obi Melifonwu. He is a little bit older, so he's not going to get super high overall, but a guy that you could use and would probably be a sneaky good pickup for you. Another guy that I've addressed before in the past is Keon Crossan. Nice 23-year-old with 95 speed, 92 agility, 91 acceleration, so really good physical attributes, really fast player. In today's game, especially if you're playing on my sliders or sliders similar to mine where you have the speed threshold cranked down, where the fast players are way faster than everybody else, it really helps to have these guys with good speed. And Keon Crossan could be that guy for you if you're struggling to find a good corner. Go and pick up Keon Crossan and see if you could develop him into an effective corner for you, because that 95 speed allows him to keep up with just about any receiver in the game. And as a 68 overall, you can get him for cheap. He might even be a free agent in your league. He's only 23 years old, so you got time to develop him. Highly recommend Keon Crossan. The next one that plays really well, plays out of his mind, and I believe it's just because he's coded into the game that way, because he was a high pedigree type player, is Teez Tabor, 22 years old, 87 speed, so not fast, 85 agility, not very agile, and 90 acceleration. He's just a really good slot corner. He plays really well as a zone corner. That's what you're going to want to utilize him as. Unless you get really lucky with speed upgrades or something like that, you're really just going to want to use him as a slot type guy, a zone type guy, maybe even a safety, but he plays really well. You'll even see him oftentimes in your franchise is picked up by an AI team. He'll end up starting for another team, and he plays really well, and I've had him play well against me. I've had him play well for me. I like him a lot. I'm actually kind of off limits from being able to sign him in most of my leagues because I can take him and make him a really good corner, so my friends kind of ban me from using him. So another guy that I highly recommend. And we're getting close to my favorite player on this list, and you guys might be surprised that he's this low down on the list, but my favorite player on this list is down all the way at the bottom. TJ Green, another really good player, a guy that you can play at safety or at corner, a guy that has played safety in past years. 67 overall, very fast player with 93 speed, 93 acceleration. Obviously, he only has 81 agility, so he's kind of more suited to play safety because he's not a guy that's going to be in man-to-man coverage. He's not going to be able to kind of break left and right and follow wide receivers' routes as easily, so I recommend playing him at safety or usering him wherever you play him at. Definitely recommend him as kind of like a user player, a user safety more than anything. The next one is Tony Brown. You could probably already see why I like him quite a bit. 67 overall, 24 years old, 94 speed, 90 agility, 92 acceleration. He plays really well. Good frame at 6 foot tall. You could turn him into something nice, maybe just a depth corner for you, maybe a second or third corner, depending on how good you are at developing players. But I recommend him quite a bit because his size and speed combination is really nice. My favorite player on this list, and I'll show you guys why once I get into a franchise, is Tremont Smith. I have no idea why. I have absolutely no idea why, but this guy plays like a monster in this game. He's got 93 speed, he's got 94 acceleration, and only 86 agility, but he plays like an absolute monster. And just wait a couple minutes, I'm going to show you guys him in my franchise. He's up to a superstar, he's into the 80s, and he just plays like a phenomenal player. I really recommend you guys go and get him. I think he's a free agent in most leagues, so you'll probably be able to get him for cheap, if not nothing. Highly recommend Tremont Smith. The last three guys on this list I've addressed in the past. Kevin Tolliver I like because he's 6'2" and has, decent physical attributes with 89 speed, 90 acceleration, 88 agility. You can turn him into a good slot corner. Very physical, matches up well with tight ends, so definitely recommend him. The last guy down here with speed is Jalen Myrick. 95 speed, 95 acceleration, 85 agility. Another just super fast player that you could turn into something for you. Especially if you're playing on my sliders, like I said, or if you're playing on speed threshold sliders where fast players are fast, you're going to want to pick up some of these faster depth corners and utilize them to your, fullest potential. The last guy on the list is Adonis Alexander, another guy that I don't really know why he plays well, but he does. He's only a 64 overall. He's 22 years old, so he does have room to grow, but he's got a big build. He's 6'3", 207, 87 speed, 82 agility, so he factors out more as a slot corner type of guy, maybe even a safety, but plays really well when given the opportunity to. So I'm going to jump over to my franchise, and I'll show you guys some of the progression on some of these players, and just show you guys how good you can make some of these players if given the opportunity to. Alright, so we're loading up my latest league, which is this Bills league. We're a couple seasons in. My team's up to a 91 overall, and there's two players in specific, actually maybe three, that are on this list that I want to show you guys. So on defense, the first one I wanted to show you is Tremont Smith. He's up to an 84 overall with Superstar at safety. This guy's just an absolute monster. I've been able to get a ton of interceptions with him, a ton of sacks, a ton of tackles, and he's gotten even some speed upgrades and stuff like that. He just plays like a really good player. I user him sometimes. He's a really good user because of his agility and his speed and everything like that. So he's really effective as that type of player. So just an example of how good you can make some of these players. He starts off as like a 64 or 65 overall, and I have him up to an 84 with confidence. Definitely recommend Tremont Smith. The next one here is Teron Johnson, another guy I showed you guys on that list that was like a 76 or 77. He is up to an 88 with confidence after a couple seasons, which is just absolutely phenomenal. You can look at his stats here. Very good player all around. And the one thing I do want to show you guys is his stats from last season. He had 16 interceptions for me last season, and that was whenever I was playing him as a starting corner. I ended up transitioning him to safety just for the added benefit of having that guy over top, because I had good corners. I was able to sign some corners in free agency as well to help me out. I was able to bring in Richard Sherman and stuff like that. So I ended up transitioning him to safety. Not as many interceptions this year, but still played really well. Broke up a bunch of passes, had a bunch of tackles. So another guy that you can turn into a really good player for you guys. And like I said, he started off as like a 76. Levi Wallace is the other one. He's up to an 83 now with confidence. I haven't focused on, developing him very much up to this point. So an 82 is respectable for a player that I haven't really focused on developing at all. More likely than not, if you focused on developing him like I did with Teron Johnson and Tremont Smith, you'd probably have him up into the high 80s like Teron Johnson is. Like I said, another young guy that you can turn into a really good player for you. And those are just a couple examples of what you can do with young corners. Grant Haley's another one. He starts off as like a 70 or 71. And I haven't even done much with him. He's just played backup corner for me, and he's up to a 75. So imagine if you started him and got him XP or focus trained him, you could probably have him up into the 80s in no time. And a really effective player. I got a speed upgrade on him, so he's up to 92 speed and 92 acceleration with that 97 agility. Really, really nice. And a really good man corner for me. So I'm definitely not letting him go anytime soon. Really good rotational type corner for me, and would start if I didn't have better players ahead of him on the depth chart. So hopefully that helps you guys out in some way. I know that I've already addressed corners, in a Hidden Gems video on the channel, but I had been getting some other comments for it, so I figured I would revisit it, show you guys some of my favorite players, and show you guys how good you can get them. Like Tremont Smith up to an 84, Teron Johnson up to an 88. This is the perfect example. Tremont Smith really is, because he starts out as like a 64 or 65. I have him up to an 82 or 82, 84 with confidence. Superstar. So you can really take some of these guys off this Hidden Gems list and make them into really good players for you. So I'm going to go back to the Hidden Gems list one more time and just scroll through it, just so you guys can screenshot anything if you would like to, and then we'll sign out for today. Don't forget to leave a like on the video. Don't forget to comment down below what you guys would like to see next. Anything I can help you with, please feel free to let me know. And then in addition to that, subscribe to the channel if you're new here. I'll just show you guys the players one more time. Lots of different diversity, all the way from 80 overall down through into the 60s. Like I said, Tremont Smith started off as a 65. I have him up basically 20 overall points in the matter of 2 seasons, and he has Superstar. He starts off with normal. And then we can go and show you Teron Johnson real quick. Starts off as a 76. I have him up to an 88 with Star. You could probably develop him even better if you got an X Factor challenge with him, a Dev Trait challenge with him. I just didn't happen to get one. So that's my first-hand example. That's my revised list of all the Hidden Gem corners in Madden 20. Hopefully it helps you guys out in some way. Like I said, leave your feedback on the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Hope you guys have a good one.